Hey, y'all, thanks again for listening to Drew Tessier's Mostly Queer Comedy Podcast. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review. You can follow me at Drew Tessier NYC. And if you want to see it live, you can watch this on YouTube. Thanks, y'all.
It's Drew Tessier's Mostly Queer Comedy Show. Let's talk, y'all.
Hey, y'all, welcome to another episode of Drew Tessier's Mostly Queer Comedy Podcast. I'm joined here today with internet heartthrob Jeremy Crittenden. I love making you blush every time I say that. You're an interesting guest. I'm excited to have you on because you're sort of new to comedy.
Yeah.
But you are not new to the world of social media, and you've got a really big social media presence. Where do we want to start? I guess, when did the social media thing start for you?
So I really started spending a lot of time on social media during the pandemic.
I heard
so you're familiar? I was sitting around doing nothing and thought I needed a creative outlet of some kind, and I thought photography would be a great creative outlet because you don't really need much to do it other than your
Right.
phone. So yeah, I started going out and taking pictures, and slowly but surely numbers started going up.
So it was more when you started. Now, did you have a photography background before that point, or it was like, oh, the world is ended, I'm going to learn how to use a camera?
No, I knew little bits and pieces, but I really started trying to learn more specifically, get some technique down, and during the pandemic.
So before it became more about your physique stuff
Yeah.
and whatnot, it was more pictures that you were taking.
Yeah.
And then you were just give the kids what they want.
That's right. That's right.
So you're originally from Canada,
Yeah,
correct?
that's
All
right.
right. And when did you move to New York?
So I moved to New York. I never really know how to answer this question because I was dating an American, so I was back and forth between New York and Toronto quite a bit. But I would say I really 2017. I think I was here most of the time.
Okay, so you had a couple good years before the world went to shit.
Yeah, I got to know. I figured myself out in New York before the pandemic hit, so I kind of knew her before and after.
You've had 2 gay marriages,
Yep.
2 gay divorces.
2 gay divorces.
All right, so was one of them in Canada?
Yeah.
And then, so after the end of the first one, that's when you came to New York?
Yeah, I actually think the first one technically happened while I was pretty much already here.
Oh.
Yeah. So we'd been separated for ages and ages. We just hadn't actually done the actual divorce.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Was gay marriage legal in Canada before the United States?
Yeah, 2005.
And then when did you get married the first time?
2011?
Oh, okay. It's so weird. It's the whole time spectrum of gay marriage is insane to me because part of me feels like it's always been here.
Yeah.
But I remember having arguments with gays older than me, if you could imagine, but this was 20 years ago of this is a pipe dream. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
You're crazy. And I'm like, no, I think it actually, it was still kind of surprising and quick when it did happen. And then
Right.
here we are. You were doing performance of any time when you were in Canada?
Yeah, I used to do musical theater. I did musical theater for 20 years.
Oh, I guess that I didn't realize.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I left home, I went to school for film acting, but I've always sang, so I ended up, because you're a boy who can sing, you end up working in musical theater, right?
Right.
So I worked in musical theater, got my equity card in Canada, worked across the country, did that for years and years, and then once, because I played teenagers forever, I was playing a 16-year-old when I was 34.
Right.
So once I got too old to play teenagers, but not old enough to play their dads, I started working more in film and television and kind of stopped doing musical theater. For the most part, I'm still I did a Broadway show, and
You did a Broadway show?
Yeah, yeah.
What show?
Very briefly, I was in Paradise Square.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I did not see. We learn so much when we have people on here. What is the Broadway of Canada?
The Broadway of Canada. Well, there's a couple things. There's in.
I know Broadway. I know Canada's a huge.
Sure. No, but Toronto, there's the big producer in Toronto is the Mirvishes, and they're who kind of produce a lot of shows that either end up on Broadway or shows that are having a Canadian run in Toronto. But then we have 2 big festivals, the Stratford Festival and the Shaw Festival, that are they produce huge musicals and do a really incredible job. And they're maybe arguably the most like sought after places to work as an actor, stage actor anyway, in Canada.
Was there any show that you ran for like a long time while you were?
I did Avenue Q for about 6 months, and then I also did the musical Altar Boys over a bunch of different runs for, I don't know, a couple hundred performances.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you were Brian in Avenue Q, or?
No, I played Princeton and Rod.
Oh, fun. So
Yeah.
you got to do. Did you have a puppet background before?
A little bit, but not that style of puppet, not like the Muppet style of puppet. So when I got that job, and that was like my dream part.
Yeah.
I saw John Tartaglia and most of the original cast do it in Vegas. It was in Vegas for like a hot second.
Yeah.
And I saw that show and I was like, that's my Hamlet. That is my Hamlet. That is what I want to do more than anything else in the world. And I had all these like close calls with it. And then I finally booked it in Calgary at a dinner theater. And we had 2 weeks before we had an audience. And that was 2 weeks to learn that show, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And learn how to puppeteer.
That is really wild.
It was really,
And then you ran
really
it for
wild.
6 months.
I ran it there for a few months, and then I think I had a couple weeks off, and then I jumped into a tour of it, and then sit down in Vancouver for a little bit as well.
So that was an equity tour? With
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing. I have a strong connection. If you don't know, Avenue Q is a brilliant show, early 2000s, that sort of the conceit is our generation, because at that point we were in our 20s-ish,
Yeah.
give or take. No, I was in my 20s when that came out, 100%. That our generation kind of learned everything we know from Sesame Street. So it's sort of teaching. I've always thought they need to do a sequel, because so much has changed. Because that's sort of targeted at millennials, sort
Absolutely.
of a Zoomers, especially now that Sesame Street's on HBO and you have to pay for it, which sort of takes the whole
Yeah, right.
public broadcast aspect of it. But it's such a funny show. And when I first moved to the city, I was interning for Signature Theater, which takes one playwright and showcases them for an entire season. And my direct boss, who actually hired me, had worked with the Vineyard, taking Avenue Q all the way to Broadway.
Wow.
So that's just sort of one of those dream shows that started
Yeah.
in a small nonprofit theater and just moved its way up to Broadway. It's such a funny show.
Yeah, won the Tony for Best Musical.
Right.
Beat Wicked for Best Musical.
Fair. This is see, I had things written down to talk about, and I had no idea that you were a theater queen. This is fresh information.
A former theater queen.
So, pandemic happens.
Yeah.
You learn the camera. You start doing. What was like the post that just sort of shot it to the next level?
there was this filter that was a "Which Disney princess are you?" filter.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think I don't know what I was doing. I was somewhere midtown. I stopped into a dig. I was eating lunch. I saw this filter and I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this right now. And so I did the filter. I ended up being Princess Jasmine, obviously.
Problematic.
And it, like, I posted it. I thought nothing of it. Because at this point, like, if I had a post that had like 100 likes, I was like, work,
Right.
So I posted this thing. I kind of forgot about it. And every time I opened up my phone, it was just like this long list of likes
Wild.
for this "What Disney princess are you?" post. And so that went viral. And I think I was getting like 1,000 followers a day from it for a while.
I mean, stand-up comedians listening to this are beating their heads against a wall right now.
100%.
The amount of time that they spend writing sketches, planning sketches, setting up the whole thing. If I ever had I'm not really on Twitter anymore, but if I ever had a tweet that got 3 likes, I would have it engraved on my headstone. I've never had any kind of traction at all in that sort of way. But that's fascinating. It's always the things that. Or
Well, it was crazy. And then after that, I couldn't miss. Like, everything I posted would hit, and so that was cool. But eventually, that ride kind of like peters out, and that's when you go like, okay, what am I doing? Like, am I doing Disney princess
Which
filters?
princess am I?
Yeah. And then that starts to make you get like a little bit more creative. Or for me, that was right around the same time that I was really trying to like really invest in myself fitness wise.
Right.
So then I started taking my shirt off, and then that was a whole new wave of followers.
So, girls, if you're looking for more followers, it comes when you take your shirt off.
Yeah.
Again, we learned so much.
You started the Disney princess, and then you move your way into the thirst traps.
I think this is the
That's the
first
pipeline.
episode I've done in sleeves. I knew you were coming, so
We couldn't wear the same dress.
so when I really like, I think one thing you and I sort of have in common is
Yeah.
this sort of just still not knowing what you want to do when you grow up.
Sure.
I mean, sort of this evolving kind of keep trying, keep playing, keep doing. Yes, you have to keep earning money, and yes, you
Yeah.
have to do that. I mean, the example I always think of is like, you have to, if you are kind of a dreamer and you are trying to do something different, know that there are periods of time that you just have to do this job thing. You have to do
100%.
whatever it is that's making the money, but you just can't ever lose sight of whatever it is that you're reaching for at
Yeah.
the same time. It's sort of like, I say it's like being in a pool. It is, always keep that one hand on the edge, but
Yeah.
that's also my metaphor for doing LSD. I don't know. I may have just confused myself. But so when did the bug hit that like now I want to go try it? Which makes sense. I mean, if you've already got
Yeah.
the hard part, which is the social media following, and you have the performance background, when was the I'm going to start doing comedy thing?
Oh gosh, I'll be totally real with you. My second husband is like one of the funniest people I know. We used to laugh so much. He used to make me laugh so hard. And then after we broke up, I was like,
He
there's so
died
much
tragically
less.
in a plane crash.
That's no. There was just so much less laughter in my life. And doing stand up was something I'd always thought about. And so I thought, like, fuck it. I had just turned 40, and I had this thing of going like, oh, if I look at the first 40 years of my life, I define it as like the marriages that I was in, and then you're in your family. So it's always defined by other people to me. And I thought I want the next 40 to be the exact opposite of that. I want the next 40 to be defined by going out and doing all the things that I wanted to do and making the most of the things that I'm passionate about. And so stand-up was one of the first things that came to mind.
So what was the first? You went to an open mic first, or
No, I took a class, and the first, like, you show up on the first day, and they'd said ahead of time, like, hey, if you have 5 minutes, bring your 5 minutes. And if you've never done this before, just bring in some ideas. So in my mind, it was like we'd be sitting down and writing and learning the math of stand-up, right? And it wasn't. We walked in, and the teacher went like, everybody's doing 3 minutes. And I went, I have no minutes. And he said, you know how to stand in front of a microphone and talk, yeah? And I went, yeah. And he's like, then you're doing 3 minutes.
And then you did the industry room at Broadway.
Yeah, so, we did that. We did the showcase after the thing, which went really, really well. And then I was just like digging into like, okay, how can I find what's the next thing that I do? How do I keep doing this? And I found the industry room.
Yeah, so the industry room, I feel like it's come up a couple times on the podcast, and we always just slide past it. So the Broadway Comedy Club is sort of an interesting model, the way that they do their audition show, because I know every club's different, and some of them you kind of got to get, recommended by somebody else,
Right.
and then you get as a personal audition. Sometimes they'll do, I don't know, one of the clubs, I feel like you line up around the block once a year or something. I don't know. Anyway.
Oh, my gosh.
But the way Broadway, we do a weekly show called The Industry Room that's run by our booker. And it allows you to, it's 5 minutes. And what's cool about that show is, unlike all the others, there is a chance that it can lead to more stage time.
Yeah.
So, I'm a big believer in it because I did it 6 years ago. One time I got a residency, and now I'm booked regularly at both clubs. So I've always very happily promoted the industry room because for me it paid off.
Yeah, same here. It was great.
And I think I just, I don't know, pulled it out of a hat. I mean, I was Googling one day. I was doing, it was when I was still in my, have you ever done the Artist Way?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in my
Sorry,
Artist.
I've started the Artist's Way 100 times.
I think
Have I ever
that's-
done the Artist's Way? No.
And I'm normally, that's more me. I mean, I'm normally the type of person to try something, set it down, move on. Like,
Yeah.
I got it, But I went balls deep into the Artist Way. I mean,
Wow.
it was life-changing for
Wow.
me. So it was while I was still doing my morning pages and all that shit. And, kind of while writing, it was like, what can I do that's going to get me from the open mic scene to whatever comes next. And basically Googled, and the industry room came up, and I put it on the calendar, and then I trained like the Olympics for that.
Yeah.
And I didn't make any friends that night, like, because now I help run the industry room from time to time. I've hosted it a couple times. So usually people meet there, and a lot of times, will make their longtime friends with other people auditioning for the clubs that night. But I sat in the hallway with my headphones on, just running my set over and over and over again. And
Yeah, I think I kind of did the same thing, to be honest. I'm trying to think I don't really remember too many people that were on that night. I think I was so busy, like, going over the set and like looking at my watch and timing it out, and didn't want to go over the 5 and all of that stuff. So, but it's the people that I've met since that at Broadway or at Greenwich Village that have all done the industry room. It's amazing how often it comes up.
Well,
it's
I
like,
mean,
did you do industry room?
Yeah, that's the rite of passage. I mean, that is the only way to get into our clubs,
Right.
is to do the audition show. There was something. Oh, and then Rich, who runs the show, our club booker, recommended you to do the festival.
That's right.
The New York Queer Comedy Festival, which is where I met you, and then we've done lots of shows together.
Yeah.
Did you do basically the same set for the industry room that you did for the festival? Because you do pretty gay material. I mean,
it's super gay. I think a variation of it, like my set lately has been really about, being middle-aged and twice divorced in a realm where there's barely any divorcees. Like, the only thing that's newer than gay marriage is gay divorce.
Right.
And I've got 2 of them.
it's also about taking a whole pick, just so you guys.
Yeah, we definitely get into the art,
the
of
art
an
of
asshole
being
pick.
the gay divorcee.
Yeah. But it used to be like really half and half. It was like half divorce stuff and then into, and now I'm trying to date. And I think the more that I've kind of improved as a writer, or I think I've improved as a writer, the more I've gotten out of the divorce stuff, and sort of like the my dating stuff is kind of like the next 5 minutes, I think, that I develop.
Yeah, I've been challenging myself to write a lot lately because I'm like, I am still. I had this moment during Christmas, because that's our busiest time for the clubs. It's in between Christmas and New Year's. There's just so many people in town, and they just add shows and add shows. I mean, there's like a 5 and a 5:15, and it's just there's so many shows, and I was not exaggerating. I think I had 6 shows that night between the two rooms, and there was this moment when I was in the middle of a joke, and I swear to Christ, I had a complete out-of-body experience. It was like, I am so sick of every joke that I'm doing right now, and I am talking about a breakup from 2 years ago still, which on some level probably isn't healthy either. I mean, just sort of reliving the. So I sort of glossed over. So the first marriage was in Canada.
Yeah.
But the breakup was happening as you were already playing. I mean, how did that come? Oh,
No, we were already split. We were
Okay,
separated, and so it was just like a matter of. It was just really a matter of paperwork at that point, and I can't really remember why we just hadn't done it. But we still, like, we owned a company together. We were still very much in each other's lives. Right. And then I met my second husband, and it was funny. I always thought of like being divorced as like a real liability in dating. And it's still to this day, like, you got to volunteer that information relatively early on. You know what I mean? You don't want to be on date 7 and be like, oh, by the way, I've been married twice. It's a little jarring news, you know? So on our first date, I used to like volunteer it on the first date. I'm like, I'm divorced, but I'm like, technically we're not. Yeah, technically we're separated. And he was like, so you're married. I was like, no, technically not married. But it was always kind of like this thing, that I could feel.
It's a Canadian marriage.
It doesn't count. It doesn't count. It's a more polite thing. It's always on ice. But it was a thing in our relationship. Like, I could tell it was very much kind of like weighing on him that, and I don't know why, but so yeah, it kind of became a priority as I knew we were going to kind of move into a life together to kind of get that one wrapped up.
So but that's always considerate, I think, to wrap one marriage up before you get
start
into another
one.
one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just polite. So you met husband number 2 in New York.
No, actually in Toronto. He was rehearsing a show. He's an actor as well. He was rehearsing for something in Toronto, so we met there and just like spent time together while he was in the city. And then as he was about to leave, I was like, I think we should just try to keep this thing going. And we did.
And so, were you ever married, living in New York together here?
Yeah.
Is he still in New York, or did he go back?
No, he lives on the other side of the country now.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a nice buffer. A generous buffer for an ex.
So when did you become single again? What year?
It was just like 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, 2 years ago, right around this time.
Did COVID impact that, or?
It certainly didn't help.
Yeah, it sounds.
It certainly
same
didn't
answer I
help.
give. Yeah.
Because I mean, like the company that I had back home in Canada was a live ticketing platform. So we didn't serve that company. Didn't survive the pandemic, and that was really how I lived my life. Like
Yeah.
that underwrote my life. So I'd kind of lost everything over the pandemic. We'd been stuck in this apartment together. He also, because he's a theater actor, was also out of work. So when you had like a double live entertainment couple during the pandemic, there was like a unique pressure there, because not only are you in the same space together, you're both unable to do the thing that you are built to do.
Yeah. Yeah. God.
So I couldn't say that ended it, but it didn't help. That definitely didn't help.
So you're waxed, you're vaxxed, you're ready to get back on the streets. What? Are you a grinder guy? Are you?
Oh my gosh, I go through waves. Don't we all have those moments of like, I'm deleting all the apps, and then we delete all the apps, and then we reinstall them a week later. But I just sort of like let myself be by myself for quite a while, like maybe hook up here or there, and then I would say about like 8 or 9 months ago, I started like being open to the idea of kind of like dating again. But when I started, I wasn't using the apps. I was like, no, I'm way better in person. I like it better meeting people in person. And so that was really what I tried to do, was just meet people in person.
I mean, I guess plus, and you and I have talked about this ourselves, just hanging out and having drinks, like that. You've gone out with people that have sort of known you from your online presence, and that's, well, what I won't answer for you. What has that been like, meeting people that sort of know you as one thing before?
Well, it's kind of funny because it's actually happened to be both ways. Like, I've ended up spending time with somebody that I had followed for a while, and I've also like met guys that have been following me, and so there's always like this weird little dance of at what point do we reveal that like we kind of already know each other, or you know me, or I know you, or
your
whatever.
Pants are about to come off. You're going to see my name tattooed across your ass. Like I've got to get ahead of this.
That was a weird one. He's going to get it removed, though. He promised when that hookup didn't work out. But no, it's fine. Like I think at least at the start, it provides like a little bit of conversation. And it's really fucking weird the first time. But then after the first time, it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. You know this much about me. Social media is wild because I end up meeting people a lot of times, not even in a romantic sense, that are like, oh, I follow you. Hey, I really, really like this reel. Or, hey, aren't you the guy that does the bit about a daddy hatch? Like that's happening all the time right now.
Yeah.
And
that clip from the festival, has been on fire because we collaborated with the Instagram page, and it's probably our biggest runner, one of two right now that's just still getting likes every day.
Yeah, and people really like it. That's tapped into something with people, so that's kind of cool. So, it's kind of, I'm a little bit used to it now of being able to go like, okay, cool, we have something to talk about here, and it doesn't feel like a weird kind of thing that somebody goes, hey, I already know this about you.
Right. So the joke that we're referencing, talk a little bit about the daddy hatch, because I think that is a very relatable concept to us aging gays.
Yeah. Well, for me, like, anyways, it just seemed to be like this kind of overnight thing where I went from like, my taste in men has always kind of stayed the same.
Right.
And as I got like into my 30s, those guys were no longer really into me. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of a switch flicked. And all of those guys were suddenly really into me. And I was like, what the hell has happened?
Right.
And at the same time, people started calling me daddy. And I was like, oh, I crossed over. I've had my daddy hatch. Yeah, so, and it's funny, actually, that night at the festival was the first time I used that joke. That I wrote that day, probably in the hour right before going on stage. And I had just been like thinking about this concept of like, the reasons that you've become a daddy.
Right.
And then the obviously, like, everyone talks about their twink death. And I went, what's the equivalent to that? It's a
Right.
daddy hatch.
If you're listening at home, do not write a new joke and drop it into your set that night when you're into a
Yeah,
competition.
no, that was a risk, especially because I was opening with it as well. But I wrote it, and I was kind of like, I feel real confident about this one. And I thought, here goes nothing.
So you post a lot of this stuff with not just your stand-up comedy,
Mm.
but also you do a lot of just talking into camera.
Yeah.
I mean, and you do fitness stuff as well, or?
Yeah. It's funny. I've been kind of like on a little dance lately, as you see like what works on your account or what doesn't work on your account. And I've been kind of working with like a personal trainer, and I found that it's. I'll be real. It's less fitness stuff. It's more thirst traps. Nobody wants their fitness advice from me. Every once in a while, I'll get a question about fitness, but really, people just, it's horny gays.
Yeah,
Horny
yeah.
gays. I'm going to give the horny gays what they want. But yeah, and then I also do like comedy reels of someone just like making a joke or something. I've like developed material that way as well, of going like, I have this idea for a thing. I'm going to do a little reel on it, and I'm going to see what the response to the reel is. And if it works well, I'm going to write more stuff based on that. And actually, that's a lot of how I've also built more daddy hatch material has been based on a reel.
Have you ever had, like, because I know once you sort of get to a certain level of followers, like companies will reach out to you,
Yeah.
like, wear our T-shirt, or has
Yes.
anybody?
Yeah, I've had a bunch of different ones, but I think one of the most like interesting ones was a product called Popstar. Have you ever heard of Popstar?
No, what is it?
So it's a supplement, and
God, now I feel like we're in a commercial.
but it's a supplement that it helps you produce more cum, and it makes your cum taste better. So you have bigger loads, and they taste better. That's their whole thing.
Did you ever try it?
Oh yeah, 100%. It definitely works. It was funny, but like they reached out to me, and the first time they reached out to me, I was like, this is too much. I can't do this. And I kind of like I brushed them off, or I think I like quoted them like an insane price or something like that to kind of like in my mind I was like, I don't want to be tempted by this, because if I agree to this, I have to figure out how to make this work and not like feel like it's going to be a liability on my
Right,
career
right.
at some point. And so they came back. They're like, we really want to work with you. And I went, okay, I'll do this, but like I have to make it like it has to be like a little sketch. I have to make it like a sketch. And they were like, no, that's exactly what we want. And so it was the first time that I wrote like a sketch for a brand deal, as opposed to just like, hey, you should use this supplement.
What were some of the other ones that you?
Oh my gosh, there's been like protein powders and greens powders and creatine, a lot of fitnessy kind of stuff.
Do you use creatine?
I do, yeah.
I've been using it for the last few months. I mean, I did it when I was younger.
Yeah.
When it was just sort of the sand in a glass of water. This is more of a pre-workout drink, so now
Yeah.
it tastes like sand in a thing of Kool-Aid.
Yeah. I love Sandy Kool-Aid.
Sandy Kool-Aid is my drag name.
Actually, that's a great drag.
Mentioning this because you had mentioned it when we first started. You had done we talked about puppets when you did Avenue Q. You did a Golden Girls puppet show at one point?
Yeah. Yeah, it was called Thank You for Being a Friend. And it was kind of like 2 or 3 Golden Girls episodes kind of smushed together into like, I think it was around a 90-minute.
So you were using the actual sound feed or the clips from the actual shows?
No, it was like largely a lot of the dialogue and
Okay,
stuff, and like the
gotcha.
storylines that they also like kind of, made a little bit sillier to suit the play
Right.
itself. But it was all Avenue Q style puppets of the 4 Golden Girls, or sorry, 5?
4.
4.
How
Oh my
dare
God.
you.
I know. I should give away my gay card now. Sorry, gals.
So that was after the Avenue Q stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, cool, that makes sense.
Yeah. And it was funny, like my agent emailed me one day and they're like, hey, we're just sending you this because we know of your puppeteering experience and we know you like doing it, but there's this Golden Girls thing and they're looking for a guy to play Dorothy. And I was like, this sounds so bizarre to me.
So all the other characters were women?
All of the other characters were being puppeteered by women, but they wanted a man. I don't know if they wanted a man or they were open to a man for Dorothy.
That's more fucked up than even like all drag queens playing the Golden Girls. It's like we're just gonna get one for Dorothy. Poor B. Arthur.
Poor B.
If she heard that, well, I don't know. She would either.
I
love
think
it
she'd
or-
think it was fabulous.
Well, that was one of the issues she complained about while she was on the show, was that it just became just sort of one "Isn't Dorothy man-like" joke over and over
Right,
again.
right.
Which is why she wanted to pull the plug on the show earlier than the rest of them did.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, she said it was just became Dorothy bashing. You
Oh.
know?
But she was on, like, always my favorite Golden Girl.
It's such a good show.
Such a good show. I remember, like, that's was something that my family watched when I was a kid. That's probably what made me gay, actually.
Oh
is
yeah,
Golden
I mean
Girls.
I didn't like cartoons as a kid, so I was very big into sitcoms, but particularly Golden Girls from when it was coming on new, when I was little boy, to my best friend Katie and I watched it all the time in college. I still turn it on,
Yeah.
you know. I think, and it's so funny. You watch it now, and you're just like, oh, this was written to be for gay men. I mean,
100%
and
it
probably
was.
by a room full of gay men, but. It's such a funny show.
But it was so fun being able to do this show because of like the challenge of the puppeteering with it and like having to figure out a B. Arthur impression and then getting to like merge together all these like fun things that I loved, like the queerness of a gay man playing Dorothy, doing this thing with puppets. It was just like, it was so much fun. And
How did you hone in on the Dorothy voice?
I spent I watched so many episodes and I found this like YouTube montage of like the best, I can't remember if it was like the best burns or of Dorothy's, best bits. Dorothy's best bits. And I would just watch it over and over and over again and like try to find like the right pitch, the right like level of raspiness, the right, and then like I thought it was okay, and then you put the puppet on, and it was like it was pretty amazing. Like people went crazy for this impression of Dorothy.
I would have loved this show. I mean, I still hung up on the idea of all the characters being played by women and then poor Dorothy being played by. And you're probably not even as tall as B. Arthur is, because she is super tall. I think.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
she gives tall. She's
gives
got tall energy.
Yeah, she's got the big shoulder pads.
Yeah.
So it's hard to tell.
But it was cool. We had this. The entrance was kind of done in a way that I was a little bit hidden until you like turned around and the puppet we'd have just like with a hand on her hip, like super sassy out to audience. And it just like it may be the only time in my life that I will make an entrance in something to applause.
Huh.
Entrance applause every single time.
That's so fun.
Yeah, people went crazy for it.
You've been doing a lot of shows with me.
Yeah.
Actually, we have a show coming up Wednesday. Well, this show will have already happened when this airs
Right.
for sure.
But I'm sure we'll have a Wednesday show coming
Right,
up.
I think exactly. There's queer shows every single Wednesday at Greenwich Village Comedy Club. You've been hosting a lot,
Yeah.
which is you're a great host.
Thanks.
How has do you do the same material in the queer shows that you do for the mixed shows, or do you tweak it a little?
Well, this is the thing: is I'm in a festival right now that's mixed.
Yeah.
It's not all queer artists, and so going into the first round, and actually we did a show at Greenwich Village that was mixed as well recently, and I was a little bit nervous about it. I was like, has the material become too queer specific? And it actually works pretty well. There's a couple of things that I make little adjustments to here and there. Like I have a reference to Leah Delaria sometimes in a joke that I take that out because straight people don't know. And I've actually put in Rosie O'Donnell, and that's worked really, really well. And
Rosie
little things
O'Donnell
like
for when
that.
you can't get Leah Deloria. And that's all we'll say about that, because I would love to have both of them.
Both
on
of
the
them,
show.
exactly. Oh my God! Please let me be in the room when it happens. But yeah, no, I think largely like a lot of the themes are still pretty relatable, and even the things that I think are kind of queer specific, like they're so fun that I think it's kind of interesting if you're not in queer culture to kind of like get that little glimpse in.
Yeah, I mean, the first joke I ever wrote was a Grindr joke, and I used to have to explain to the audience what Grindr was before I even got into it.
I
And
had a joke about twinks, and I was like, the whole day I was like, do straights know what a twink is? Do straights know about twinks?
then there's the whole argument or the conversation going like, is twink a slur, which is the
Right.
whole thing. I think I have enough material now that I feel like I go into a show if it's like a mixed room that actually sometimes I'll do more gay shit in the mixed room, and then if it's a queer show, I might do just more of my southern stuff only because I don't want to hit the same punchlines that everybody else, the
Right.
same things, and there's definitely going to be Grindr jokes.
Oh my God, every time.
But my first set that when I did the industry room, I had a repeating glory hole tag in the straightest of straight rooms, and I don't know how many people knew what a glory hole was, and like it almost made like that one I think is actually on YouTube. One of the few sets that I have on YouTube is that first industry room set, which is insane that that's even floating out there. But
Wow.
yeah, it almost makes me blush when I look back at it. I'm like, God, I was just out there.
Yeah.
Telling these glory hole jokes
Yeah.
and hope, and then once I started moving up within the club, and I was hosting an 11 o'clock show on like Tuesday night or something. I mean, just
No.
eating shit week after week after week with like 4 drunk people in the audience,
man.
and these are the gay jokes I have. Here we go, guys. This is what we got.
Hold on to that beer. You got 8 minutes of this.
Glory holes.
Yeah.
Am I right? Do
funny.
you have your own podcast, or you have something in the works?
I'm working on it. I'm working on getting one together.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm really excited to do it because I love conversations like this. Like, I mean, we know each other and we've gone out for drinks and had great conversations. And there's so many people, especially now doing these shows, that I meet these really incredible people that I'd love to be able to sit down and chat with and get to know a little bit more, and also get to know a little bit more about their work. And I also feel as a white man, it is my obligation to have a podcast.
Certainly in this city, or
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
within the comedy industry. It's
No, but it's cool, and it also gives a good opportunity. I think one of the reasons that I keep saying like I'm working on it is I do want to find like what's my twist on how this is done,
Right.
Not to reinvent the wheel or anything like that, but it's like what is exactly like where do I? One of my mentors once in theater, I went to him and I was like, I really want to be a director. I really want to be directing. What advice do you have? You started as an actor and now you're a director, and we were having a conversation about why you want to make that change.
Right.
And he said to me something that just like resonated so deeply. He went, I just feel I'm of better use as a director than I am as an actor.
I get that,
And so I'm in this sort of, even in stand-up, part of like the search that I'm on right now, and the search of like, how do I want to do this podcast, is going like, of where am I of most use?
Right.
And so that's kind of the quest that I'm on right now.
fun.
Yeah.
So you're still in the germination period
Yeah.
of this. I was years of saying,
Sure.
I'm going to start a podcast, and then finally did. I finally forced myself to, and it's a bitch. Well, it is. It's a job.
You're not a bitch. This is a bitch. You're great.
It's it's a lot of work, and and it feels like we're just doing 2 a month, and I feel like there's one every 5 minutes. I mean,
Right.
it just
Right.
But I love it. I've loved getting to talk to people and just sort of the different, especially with queer comedians.
Yeah.
The different paths that people take within performance and within kind of finding themselves in front of a microphone at some point. Where can they see you, find you on the interwebs?
On Instagram mostly. I'm Jay Critty, JCRITTY. Someone just said to me, "Oh, you're JC Ritty, right?" And I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, "Kind of. I think from now on, I'm JC Ritty."
JC Ritty.
Yeah. Jay Critty on Instagram. I'm Hi Jay Critty, like Hi Jay Critty on TikTok, and those are the main. And Jay Critty on the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Cool. Performing all the time at the Greenwich Village Comedy Club on Wednesday nights, as well as others. come out and see a show, please like and subscribe. Thanks so much, y'all.
It's Drew Tessier's Mostly Queer Comedy Show. Let's talk, y'all.